Sirloin. Hailing from the hip area of the cow, the sirloin comes from a muscle group that gets a good workout, resulting in a leaner steak with a more substantial, satisfying chew compared to the softer premium cuts. While it may not have the rich, fatty marbling that makes other steaks dissolve on the tongue, it compensates with a bold and distinctly beefy taste. Its great price and flavor make it a versatile favorite for grilling, pan-searing, or cutting into pieces for dishes like stir-fries. Ribeye. If steaks had a Hall of Fame, the ribeye would have its own wing. Cut from the upper rib section of the cow, specifically ribs 6 through 12, this is a steak that is revered for one primary reason: its incredible marbling. Those delicate intramuscular threads of fat are the secret to the ribeye's magic. This marbling, which comes from the longissimus dorsi muscle, a muscle that does very little work, is the engine of flavor and tenderness. When a ribeye cooks, this fat melts or renders, basting the meat from the inside out. The result is a steak that is exceptionally juicy, rich, and loaded with a profound buttery beef flavor. New York strip? Now let's move just a little further down the cow to the short loin. Here we find our next contender, the New York strip, where the ribeye is known for its buttery richness. The New York strip is celebrated for its firm, satisfying chew and a more direct, intense beefy flavor. You'll notice the marbling is a bit less pronounced than in the ribeye, and the muscle grain is tighter. This gives the strip its signature texture. It's tender, but with a satisfying bite that lets you know you're eating a substantial piece of meat. Its defining feature is the thick cap of fat running along one side. Don't trim all of this off. This fat cap is a flavor bomb. While cooking, direct heat is your friend. T-bone steak. This American icon is a cross-section of the short loin, and its defining characteristic is the T-shaped bone that gives it its name. This bone performs a magical feat. It separates two entirely different steaks into one magnificent cut. On the larger side of the bone, you get a generous portion of the New York strip. On the smaller side, you get a medallion of the buttery filet mignon. The secret to success is careful heat management, positioning the steak so that the filet side is exposed to less direct heat than the strip side, ensuring both parts reach perfection simultaneously. Porterhouse. This is essentially a supersized T-bone. It is cut from the rearmost section of the short loin, where the tenderloin is at its largest. The porterhouse is a statement steak, a cut designed for sharing and for special occasions. It's an enormous piece of meat that commands attention. You need a very hot zone to sear the strip side, developing that gorgeous crust and rendering the fat, and a much cooler zone where the filet side can cook gently, preventing it from turning into a dry, overcooked puck while the strip finishes. Filet mignon. We now pivot to the epitome of tenderness, a steak so soft it can often be cut with a fork, the filet mignon. The name itself, French for cute, hints at its refined and delicate nature. This prize cut is taken from the very tip of the tenderloin, a long, thin muscle that runs along the spine of the cow. Because the tenderloin does almost no work, its muscle fibers remain incredibly fine and relaxed, resulting in a steak with an unparalleled buttery tenderness that simply melts in your mouth. Its lack of fat means it can dry out if overcooked, so a quick sear in a hot pan to a perfect medium rare is essential to protect its delicate nature. Flat iron. Sourced from the chuck or shoulder primal of the cow, the flat iron steak is a revelation in tenderness. After the filet mignon, the flat iron is considered the second most tender steak on the entire animal. It gets its name from its uniform thickness and shape, which resembles an old-fashioned metal flat iron. This uniformity is a major advantage, as it allows the steak to cook incredibly evenly, whether you're grilling, pan-searing, or broiling. It has significant and beautiful marbling, which contributes to a rich, beefy taste that is far more robust than a filet. Flank steak. This is a large, flat, lean steak cut from the abdominal muscles, right behind the plate and brisket. If you're looking for a steak with intense, in-your-face beef flavor, the flank is an excellent choice. The two golden rules of flank steak are marination and slicing. It eagerly soaks up marinades, which not only add layers of flavor, but also help to tenderize the meat. Then, after cooking it quickly over very high heat to a perfect medium rare, the final, crucial step is how you cut it. Skirt steak. Similar in some ways to the flank, the skirt steak is a long, thin cut that also comes from the diaphragm muscles of the cow. However, it is typically thinner and much coarser. Its flavor is even more robust and rich than a flank steak, which is why it's the undisputed king of fajitas and the traditional choice for classic carne asada. Its loose texture and high surface area make it a sponge for marinades, allowing it to soak up citrus, spices, and herbs to create incredibly flavorful dishes. Hanger steak. We now arrive at a legendary cut, one so prized by butchers that they would often hide it from customers to take home for themselves. This is the hanger steak. Its mystique comes from its scarcity. There is only one hanger steak per cow. It doesn't belong to any single primal cut. Instead, it hangs from the diaphragm, nestled between the last rib and the loin, helping to support the diaphragm muscle. Its texture is wonderfully tender with a loose grain that gives it a succulent quality when not overcooked. Chuck eye. Our next steak is a true insider's cut, often called the poor man's ribeye. To understand the chuck eye, you have to know its location. It's cut from the shoulder primal, the chuck, but it comes from the fifth rib, directly adjacent to where the rib primal begins. Because it's so close to its more famous and expensive neighbor, it shares many of the same wonderful characteristics. They are a fantastic bargain and are perfect for high-heat cooking methods like grilling or pan-searing. Tomahawk steak. We now move to the absolute peak of visual spectacle and steakhouse bravado. A tomahawk is, in essence, a very thick ribeye steak with a dramatic twist. The entire rib bone, often a foot long or more, is left attached. Cooking a tomahawk requires a plan, with the reverse sear method being a popular and effective choice. It's cooked low and slow first, then seared on a scorching hot grill or pan to create that perfect dark crust. It is a massive cut, meant for sharing, and serves as the ultimate centerpiece for a feast. Tri-tip steak. Now let's head west to the coast of California, the region that made our next steak a legend. We're talking about the tri-tip steak. This cut comes from the bottom of the sirloin primal and gets its name from its distinct triangular shape. The tri-tip is fairly lean but has an impressive, rich beef flavor and a wonderfully tender texture when cooked correctly. It's a relatively thick cut, so it's not a steak you'd typically sear in a pan for a few minutes. It's best treated like a small roast. Bavette. The bavette steak is cut from the same bottom sirloin area as the tri-tip, and it shares some characteristics with cuts like the skirt and flank steak. It has a very loose, open texture with a coarse grain that is fantastic at soaking up marinades. What sets the bavette apart is its combination of rich, deep, beefy flavor and a surprisingly tender bite, especially when prepared with care. It's a very juicy steak that offers a satisfying, almost fluffy texture when you chew it. Rump steak. This is the rump steak. As the name clearly states, it is cut from the rump section of the cow, a well-exercised muscle group at the hindquarters. Because this muscle works hard, the rump steak is not as tender as the premium cuts from the loin or rib. The key to a great rump steak is in the preparation and cooking. It benefits greatly from being brought to room temperature before cooking and should be cooked quickly over high heat to avoid it becoming tough. A perfect medium rare is ideal. Picanha. Finally, we travel to Brazil to meet a cut so revered it is the star of every Brazilian steakhouse. This is the picanha. It is instantly recognizable for one defining feature: a thick, beautiful cap of fat, at least a centimeter thick, that covers the entire top side of the steak. This fat cap is not a flaw. It is the absolute secret to the picanha's magic. Do not trim it off. The traditional Brazilian method is to cut the picanha into thick C-shaped steaks. Season them generously with only coarse salt. Fold them onto large skewers with the fat cap on the outside, and cook them over a live fire. As it cooks, that glorious fat cap renders down, continuously basting the meat below in its own savory tallow. This process creates a steak that is unbelievably juicy and infused with a rich, beefy flavor that is second to none. The meat itself is tender with a satisfying bite, and when it's sliced thinly right off the skewer, it's a truly unforgettable steak experience that celebrates the pure, unadulterated flavor of beef and fat. And there you have it. From the marbled majesty of the rib eye to the lean and flavorful flank, you now have the knowledge to navigate any steak menu with confidence. The next time you're at the butcher counter, you'll know exactly what you're looking for. Whether you crave buttery tenderness or a bold beefy chew, the perfect steak is out there waiting for you. Thanks for watching and happy grilling. Don't be afraid to experiment and find your own personal favorite. We'd love to hear what steak you're going to try next in the comments below.